Next topic 2.1, the Great Deficits, development of the post World War I. The First World War that led to these expansions of the certain industries in the hope that the war times boom would continue. So the First World War led to the expansions, that means a increase. So விரிவடைதல், expansions of certain industries. So some of the countries so developed the industries because is இன்னொரு வார எதிர்கொள்வதற்காக. ஸோ த சர்டன் இண்டஸ்ட்ரீஸ் இன் தி ஹோப் தட் the war times boom could be continue. War time will be continue. However, when the war came to an end in 1918, the industries that grew the meet the war times, the requirements had to be an abandoned or modified. So, is a war times, to meet the war times, the requirement is to be. So, some of the countries, the war time, the requirements were needed. So, and to be the abandoned, that means give up, கைவிடுதல். So, அந்த war timesக்கு தேவையான industries some of the countries is a develop பண்ணாங்க. After the war, thus industries was abandoned, that means a கைவிடப்பட்டது or modified. Some of the industries are modified. So end of the First World War, so some of the industries are abandoned, some of the industries are modified. These situations was made the worst by the political complications that caused by the Treaty of Versailles. The made a worst situations by the political complications caused by the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles, the signed the Germany's, the worst situations was created. A new wave of the economic nationalism which expressed the itself of the protectionism or the tariff barriers. So tariff barriers means stop, means tax. Tariff means the tax வந்து ஸ்டாப் பண்ணியிருந்தாங்க. ஸோ அஃபெக்டட் த வேர்ல்டு ட்ரேட். ஸோ த டேக்ஸஸ் ஸ்டாப் பண்ணால ஸோ அஃபெக்டட் த வேர்ல்டு ட்ரேட். தி வார் ஆல்சோ பிளேஸ்டு எ ஹெவி burden. The war also placed heavy burden of the debt. Debt means loans on every European countries. So in the First World War, in the European countries like that, the Germany, Austria, Hungary, Italy, Britain, France, Russia, so most of the countries, so heavy expenditure in the weapons, allocate the fund. So end of the World War, that countries was affected by the economic status. So heavy burden of the debt means கடன் on the European countries. Next topic, the stock market crash in the USA. The stock market, the crash in this USA. The first huge crash occurred on 24th October 1929. The First World War 1914 to 1918. So after that, well developed countries in America given to some amount by the European countries, some loans given to the European countries. After that, the European countries is developed. So first world war அப்புறம் America is a well developed in industries. So America given to money lenders. மற்ற நாடுகள் யூரோப்பியன் கண்ட்ரீஸ்க்கு கடன் கொடுக்கும் நாடுகளாக இருந்தது. ஆஃப்டர் தட் இஸ் 1929 the worst affected in the share market. The share markets collapsed in the America. This discouraged the investors. So in 1929 the share market is collapsed. This discouraged the investor and consumers to such as an extent that more and more people began to sell their shares and dispose their stocks. So most affected by the American countries. So American shareholders the sell to these markets. ஸோ அவங்க வாங்கின பொருட்கள் எல்லாத்தையும் சேல் பண்ண ஆரம்பித்தாங்க. But there were no buyers. But is a no buyers. So all of them affected by these share markets. So அதனால no buyers. This was followed by the failure of the American bankers. So this was followed by this failure of the American bankers. The American financier were forced to recall their own fund investor abroad. So American financier, already I told you, the American financier, the American government invested in the European countries. So affected by this share market in 1929, the American financier were forced to recall the collect their own fund investor in abroad. So Americans stopped this கடன் கொடுக்கறதை ஸ்டாப் பண்ணியோம். The worst affected by the Germans in 2 banks and also is a England banks. The first huge crash occurred on 24th October 1929 that discouraged the investors and consumers to each an extent that more and more people began to sell their shares and dispose their stocks. But there were no buyers. So lot of affected by the peoples and banks and industries. That times most of the people shares சேல் பண்ண ஆரம்பித்தாங்க. அதை வாங்குவதற்கு பையர்ஸ் இல்லை, no buyers. This was followed by the failure of the American bankers. So mostly affected the bankers also, American bankers. The American financier were forced to recall their own fund the investor abroad. So 2 countries mainly affected னு சொன்னேன். One is Germany, another one is England. So now the breakdown of the international system of the exchange. Breakdown of the international system of exchange. First one is that despite of the emergency measures, so the British government, so European government announced the emergency measure. அவங்க நாடுகளை சேவ் பண்ணுவதற்காக பல திட்டங்களை they introduced the government because lot of loans in the European government. நிறைய கடன் வாங்கி அமெரிக்காட்ட கடன் வாங்கினால ஸோ அது டோட்டலாக ஃபெயிலியர் ஆனதுனால அதுக்காக some measures, emergency measures. Despite the emergency measures such as a cut back in expenditure, so reduce the expenditure. Cut back in expenditure means reduce the expenditure and the increase the taxations. So அதுக்கு ஈக்குவலாக the increase the taxation. So mainly the government, the British government reduce the expenditure and increase the taxations. So he solved easily solved the many problems. That situation did not improve in England. but is not improved. Expenditure reduce பண்ணாங்க, tax increase பண்ணாங்க the British government. This situation did not improve in England. So the England did not to leave the gold stand. Gold standard. What is mean by the gold standard? The gold standard is a monetary systems. Monetary means money. Monetary systems where the country currency or paper money that carried a value directly linked to gold. So the directly linked to the gold for currency or paper money. Gold standard means நாணய முறை தங்கத்தோடு நேரடியான தொடர்பு. That means a direct link to gold. What is meant by the gold standard? The gold standard is the monetary systems where a country, the currency or paper money that carried a value directly linked to the gold. After the immediately the great number of the countries left the gold standard. So the England decided to leave the வெளியேறுது அதிலிருந்து the leave the gold standard. So immediately the great numbers countries left the gold standard. So the British government left on most of the European countries also left the gold standard. Gold standard. Each nations adopted a policy. Each nations, the European nations adopted a policy. கொள்கைகளை வகுத்தாங்க, அவங்க நாடுகளுக்கு தேவையான policies of the protectionisms and devaluations of the currency. Valuation மதிப்பு. Devaluations of currency means they reduce the currency value. The devaluations forced to creditors to stop the lending. So each nation adopted the policy of protectionisms and the devaluations of currency. Currency values reduce ஆயிடுச்சு. So the devaluations forced the creditor. The creditors means கடன் கொடுப்பவர் to stop the lending. So கடன் கொடுப்பதை stop பண்ணியாச்சு. Because the European countries leave the gold stand, immediately most of the numbers countries also left the gold standard. Then this led to this worldwide the credit contractions. Thus the defensive measures adopted by the various nations to safeguard their economic interest led to the unprecedented the decline the world economic activities. So they safeguard their economic interest. So safeguard, so அவங்க நாட்டினுடைய எக்கனாமிக்கை பாதுகாக்கணும். The safeguard their economic interest led to the unprecedented the decline the world economic activities, as if the efforts was deep and prolonged. The economists and historians call it is the Great Depression. So most of the European countries so affected the great economic depressions. So Americans also stopped the money, and the British government some implementations, for examples, they stopped the expenditure, reduced the expenditure and increased the taxations, but not improving this European government. So the England government decided to leave the gold standard. So the followed by the most of the European countries also left the gold standard. After that our countries improve the policies how to safeguard the economy. interest that by the unprecedented decline the world economic activities. Decline அப்படி அவங்க சேஃப்கார்ட் பண்ணாலுமே அந்த எக்கனாமிக் ஆக்டிவிட்டீஸ் டெக்ளைன்ஸ் மீன்ஸ் வீழ்ச்சி அடைந்தது. And after the depressions changed the political conditions in several countries. So the Great Depression, the share market was collapsed, the American government. So lot of political conditions changed. First one is in England, the Labour Party defeated in the general election in 1931. The 1931, so the England, the Labour Party defeated. In USA, the Republicans Party was rejected by the peoples. So peoples rejected that country, Republicans, in successive elections for about the 20 years after the depreciations. So the share market recovered the FDR Franklin D ரோஸ்வெல்ட் இவர் மூலியமாக தான் இந்த அமெரிக்காவுடைய ஷேர் மார்க்கெட்ஸு ரெக்கவர் ஆச்சு. தேங்க்யூ.